Hi everybody. It's been a while since I've had a video out because I've had an extremely busy summer, and I'm really sorry about that, but when I did get the time to work bees, didn't have time to make a video. So I'm here today, and the subject that I want to cover today, and I'm going to cover it as quick as I can, is weak hives. How to get a weak hive through the winter. So if you have a hive that probably has 2 to 3 frames of bees, and you still have a month and a half before you get a hard killing frost or a sustained period of freezing weather, you can get them through the winter. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's not always a sure bet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually follow this hive, so I'll have updates on this. What I want to do though is show you how I'm starting the process and keeping it, and then once a week I'll shoot a video and I'll try to show you a difference in the size of the colony, whether it's working or not, or whether they made it through the winter or not. So this is hive number 21, and a little history on this hive. This hive during the summer was in the spring it was a fully mature colony that was doing great, and then lost its queen for one reason or another. I don't know. Probably about midsummer, and then I noticed it and tried to requeen them a couple different ways, using natural methods, not using. I never ordered a queen. Actually, I did order a queen from them. For them after the first attempt failed. That queen wasn't accepted successfully. So as summer started to wane, the hive basically declined in strength, and the queens weren't working out. So I ended up with a drone laying hive, but with a lot of bees. So however, when you have a drone laying hive and a lot of bees and it's still summer, they're still dropping at a rate of about, dying every 3 weeks or so. You can see that there are some robbers flying around here, and you can see the front is a little messed up there. So a couple weeks ago, I saw that they were getting a little bit of robbing. It wasn't too bad, but they were getting robbed out a little bit. And went down and looked at them. There was about 3 frames of bees, and this is actually closer to a month ago. And I keep a few extra nukes. So I united a weak nuke with this weak hive because the weak nuke had less chance of making it through the winter as well. So that took, a few days to get them united, and I got more stuff that came on, so I wasn't able to really pay attention to them. All I was able to do was go back in and see that, yes, they united successfully, they were still queen right and everything, but I wasn't able to do anything at that time. So here I am. 3-4 days ago, I came in to check, and because I saw a little bit of the robbing, and what had happened, it was a double deep, and robbers had basically robbed out the bottom of it, but there was still some newspaper in there from when I united the hives, and so they didn't get up there and mess with the hive itself, but they completely cleaned out the bottom. So if you have a situation where a hive is not using a hive body, and they're weak, and they need some attention, take that hive body away from them. It prevents, you're able to save the comb that way, because wax moth will creep in there and start eating up on the comb if left for long enough. It also provides kind of a bed of establishing robbing behavior. So give them an area that they can occupy, and with some growing room, but that they don't have to guard all the time. So I dropped them down to a single hive body. So what I'm going to do today is, the reason they're not expanding is they're out of resources. They have no honey, or very little, and they have some pollen, but not enough. So I'm going to give them a pollen patty, and I'm going to give them syrup. And I'm going to make a video again today too about hive resources, because it's basically just a talking video. When you're looking at hive resources, everybody knows you want to look for honey and pollen. But there are other resources that bees need, and one of them is bees. A colony can only expand at a certain rate based on their current population. So in this case, this hive has about 3 frames of bees in there last I looked, and they can only expand by maybe having about 2/3 of a frame of brood, which doesn't give them much time. But if you give them the resources they need to expand, they'll expand at the maximum rate. And that's what we're going to do here. And we need to get them to at least 3 to 4 frames of brood, solid, you know, with some brood in a month's time or so. If you give them the pollen in the form of a pollen patty, and you give them the syrup, they have the resources they need to grow, and as they grow, they can lay more and more brood. However, as the days shorten in length, let me stretch my legs there. As the days shorten in length, the queen will eventually stop laying altogether. And at that point, you have to have a big enough brood nest that the bees can make it through the winter. And it doesn't have to be that big. I've seen it at pretty small levels. I've seen a grapefruit-sized cluster make it in my winter, but it was a mild winter relative to how they normally are. But it was a mild winter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the hive and I'm going to show you the hive strength. I'm going to put a pollen patty on, give them some syrup, and then we'll just check on them from week to week. You can see there are robbers flying around. So they're also, in that transition time, they started using this rear entrance. So the bees you see flying around here, which would normally be robbers, actually aren't. And they're just kind of flying around the hive, but they're not really getting in. So I want to keep them open as little as possible. So I'm going to go get all those the can of syrup and the pollen patty. I'm going to bring them out here. We're going to open them up briefly, and then we'll follow it up next week and see if they're getting any better. I also another thing you want to do, especially if the hive's getting robbed down, is shut their door down. So they got a 2-inch door there, and they got a 1-inch in the back. Now, since they're using that rear entrance as an entrance and an exit right now, I have to transition them to use that front entrance, which will be easier. So what I'll do later is, after they're in the hive for the night, I'm going to come over and I'm going to slide some screen on the inner cover, on the vent hole, and then tomorrow morning they won't be able to use that as an entrance or an exit, so they'll have to start using this front, and that will also keep the robbers at bay. It's cool. It's probably like 68 degrees, something like that, and it's also pretty windy. It's 66 degrees, but it's kind of windy. It feels like a lot less, so they're not going to be very happy to see me. But let me go light my smoker and everything, and we'll get it. It has to get done now, or they'll starve. So, but the good thing about a smaller colony, 3 frames or less, is that a quart of syrup will keep them going for a couple weeks. And once you get that syrup can on there, it's easy to replace it with another can, even if it's crappy conditions like this. But you got to get it in there in the first place. So let me go get that stuff set up, and then we'll go through that. Okay, I moved the camera to a position where you can see the size of the hive that's in here. That's what I want you to see. I'm going to get in and get out, because you can see there's a robber there flying around. The robbers are going to get in, but I want you to get an idea of the size of the hive, and I want to show you how I put the pollen patty on, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to get in and I'm going to get out. I'm also going to give you a disclaimer right now that it is never a good idea to go into a colony of bees when it's windy and cold outside. Give them a little smoke before you go in on these colder days. My disclaimer is that I'm probably going to get stung, but you never know. I'm not going to show you the queen or anything today. It's actually 66 degrees out here, so the temperature itself isn't going to hurt the bees, but they don't like the wind. Now I have to take this cover off anyway to put the pollen patty in there. But you can see they've got about 1, 2, 3, 4. They got close to 4 frames of bees. And this hole here is what I'm going to put some screen over later. later today after they go in, and I'll show you how easy that'll be. I got a huge pollen patty here because I want them to, you can't see smoke coming out because my smoker was going out, but you can see them part a little bit when I get in there, so that's how you know that they can still kind of sense. I'm actually going to flip this because I don't want it covering up the hole where the syrup's going to be. But then once you get that on there, just cut some slits in here so that they can get to it. I usually kind of double mash it here. I made this pollen patty myself. It's Mega Bee. Just used the Mega Bee recipe. Hasn't had a chance to totally cure yet, but it'll be fine. They'll start using it right away. You can see how the robbers were kind of getting in. You can see how the paper's just right there, but they were very gentle. They didn't do anything. Okay, syrup. Put the syrup on and then continue to close them up. Okay, so I'll give you a little synopsis here in a second. You can see all the bees flying around. That's because they're coming around to the back to get in the hive. And with bee, whenever there's a cavity that you can't, bees can't get out of, make sure you don't leave any bees in there. But let me move the camera now. Around to the back. You can see how they're coming straight in. You can see how they're making their way back in. They're actually flying around from the front to the rear because that's what they've been used to. That's what they've been doing. So tomorrow, actually tonight, I will put a screen on that so that they can't come in and out of that. That'll force them to use the front door. Some of those are robbers flying around, some of them aren't, but they can't get in there. You can see how the front entrance, even though there's a few bees going in and out, most of them are flying around to the back, and that's from me shaking the inner cover off on the ground there. Okay, to sum things up here, this bee has plenty of comb in there. They have plenty of room for the queen to lay. They have a little bit of honey in there, a little bit of pollen. Now they have a pollen patty for their protein source. They have sugar syrup for their carbohydrate source. And they have plenty of comb. They have a queen that's laying eggs, a good queen. They have no disease. So those are the situations that I'm in. If your hive is missing any of those resources, which resources for colonies I'm going to say real quick here, even though I'm going to make another video on it, are bees themselves, a queen, honeycomb, honey, pollen, or a substitute, and room to expand. Those are the resources within a colony. Resources external to the colony include a nectar source, a pollen source, and a water source. If they don't have all those resources, they either will be stagnant, or they won't be able to. If they're being stagnant, they won't be able to expand, or they'll die. So I made sure when I went through the hive that I knew what resources they had and what they didn't have, and I gave them the ones that they didn't have. They have plenty of comb in there, and what's going to happen, ideally what's going to happen, and you'll watch me as it happens, is as this hive body fills with syrup, I'm going to put another hive body on there, and that'll give them even more room to expand and more room to collect or to store their honey syrup. Now, one of the best ways to check the weight of a colony is just to lift up the back of the hive. Usually I say the back. And if it's easy to lift up, like that, I lift it up with two fingers. If it's easy to lift up, then they don't have the resources they need. They don't have a honey supply for sure. When it gets pretty hard for me to lift this one hive body up, then I'll know that I need to add a second hive body and keep giving them syrup. I just need to keep giving syrup as long as I can, and so that they can take it. And as you expand that brood nest and expand the amount of resources they have in the hive, they'll take care of the rest. So look for that video on Hive resources, and I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you'll follow along. We'll just see how they do from week to week. You know, we'll just see. It's going to take a minimum of a month for us to see a difference, because what they'll do in the next couple days is they'll realize that they have, all of a sudden, they have a carbohydrate source and a protein source to rear brood with, and they'll increase their egg laying to maximum. They'll increase egg laying to maximum amount that they can cover and keep at 98 degrees or thereabouts. You know, whatever temperature they keep it at. But then it takes another month before that brood actually hatches out and can provide more brood for more warm weather. But I've got about 2 months before it gets to the point where they stop rearing brood altogether. It's the end of October. About the time this hits YouTube, it'll probably be November. So it's going to take some time, but I'll take you along with me so you can kind of follow this hive, and we'll see what happens and see if YouTubers kind of like that kind of episodic type stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the comments to everyone out there. And I'll see you later.